Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here this morning for this announcement with Minister Ahmed Hussen of the Government of Canada and Minister Rebecca Schulz of the Government of Alberta. My name is Brock Harrison. I'm with Minister Schulz's office. Minister Hussen will provide some opening remarks. I will then invite Minister Schulz to provide some remarks and open the line for questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Minister Hussen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. It is a pleasure to see you all, and I want to especially thank the Honourable Rebecca Schulz, Minister of Children's Services of Alberta. Minister Schulz and I have been working very hard to ensure that Alberta families have access to affordable, quality, and safe early learning and childcare. La ministre Schulz et moi avons travaillé d'arrache-pied pour faire en sorte que les familles albertaines aient accès à des services d'apprentissage et de garde de jeunes enfants abordables de qualité. We both want to ensure that every child gets the best possible start in life. And I'm sure that it's been a very busy yet unusual summer for everyone. Canadian families are still struggling with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Parents are worried about work, about sending their kids back to school or daycare. First and foremost, I want to reassure Canadians and Albertans in particular that our priority is the health and well-being of everyone. We are also focused on safely restarting our economy and on making Canada even more resilient to possible future waves of this virus. Particularly in these times, families need to have access to safe, affordable, and accessible childcare. This is more than a convenience. It is quite simply a necessity. That is why our government, the federal government of Canada, has entered into bilateral agreements with all provinces and territories to provide them with $1.2 billion over 3 years for early learning and childcare programs, starting in 2017-2018, and will provide an additional $400 million in 2020 and 2021. So I'm very, very happy to announce that as part of this investment, more than $45 million will be allocated to Alberta this year to invest in early learning and childcare in Alberta. This means that there will be new licensed childcare spaces available, and that more Alberta families will benefit from childcare subsidies. It will also help offset the costs associated with COVID-19 closures and the reopening of childcare centers in Alberta. This is on top of the $625 million that our government, the federal government of Canada, is providing to provinces and territories for early learning and childcare through the Safe Restart Agreement. We will have more details to share soon on this particular number of $625 million and how it will be allocated. But it is safe to say that just this fiscal year, we will be transferring to provinces and territories, the federal government of Canada will be transferring to provinces and territories $625 million plus the $400 million that are allocated as part of the bilateral agreements, for a total of $1,025 million to provinces and territories from the federal government for early learning and childcare. Our government is looking forward to continuing to work with the government of Alberta to ensure that Alberta families have access to quality, affordable, and accessible childcare in Alberta. Thank you very much, and I look forward to Minister Schulz's remarks and also to the questions after that. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister Hussen. Minister Schulz, please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister Hussen, for your opening remarks. And I would like to echo how grateful I am for our childcare operators across the province who have reopened safely to support, at first, essential service workers and frontline workers throughout that pandemic, but also through the safe reopening for all families across Alberta. I know these are unprecedented times, and I am truly grateful for the amazing work that they've done, not only to ensure parents can continue to go to work, but that kids and families are kept safe. I'm so excited that we're here today and proud to be a part of this announcement that will make a very big difference for Alberta working families. It will also help with Alberta's economic recovery. This $45 million investment will help make childcare more affordable for children and families in our province who need it most, make childcare more accessible and available all across this province, and support high-quality programming at early learning and childcare centres. I'd like to thank once again Minister Hussen and the federal government for working with us to invest in Alberta's working parents, because getting parents back to work truly is a huge part of Alberta's economic recovery plan, a bold, ambitious, long-term strategy to build, diversify, and create jobs. This investment in childcare is built on 3 principles. The first is affordability. We know that Albertans need affordable childcare, especially those who are entering or re-entering the workforce or going to school while raising children. That's why we'll invest $29 million additional dollars on top of the $20 million we've put into subsidy over the last 2 budgets to increase the current childcare subsidy rates for parents who need it the most. This will mean parents of around 28,000 children will see an increase in their subsidies, making childcare that much more affordable. For those who receive full subsidy, this could mean $200 more every single month, a savings of $2,400 a year. We're also simplifying the subsidy model. Families earning up to $75,000 will be eligible to receive this subsidy, and we've eliminated some of the significant drops in subsidy amounts as income increases under the old model. Parents can now also use the new online child care subsidy application. It's a quick and easy way to check if you're eligible and then apply from your computer, your tablet, or your phone. The bottom line is that if more families can afford childcare, more Albertans can go back to work and help rebuild our economy. The second principle is accessibility, because when it comes to childcare, different families have different needs. What accessible means to a farming family in a small rural community where childcare spaces are limited is completely different from what it means for a family with a special needs child in a larger city, where spaces may in fact be available, but support for their child's needs is not. Every child, regardless of their abilities or circumstances, deserves equal access to quality childcare. Currently, more than a third of childcare centres report being unable to care for children with disabilities without extra support. This results in children leaving programs after only a short time, with their parents having no choice but to remain at home. This investment will go a long way to providing the right supports for these children so they can receive quality care and their parents can go back to work. We'll expand on the pilot project's success in inclusion by investing $9.7 million in accessibility, and part of that will go to create the new Inclusive Childcare program. This money will be used to provide coaching, professional development, and additional in-program staff to care for children that require additional support. However, as mentioned earlier, accessibility can also simply mean access to available spaces. So we'll direct dollars to create up to 385 new childcare spaces in communities where there is demand, and also to provide innovative childcare solutions for parents who work outside the typical business hours of 9 to 5. Finally, the third principle is quality. Parents want to know that the childcare centres they choose to care for their kids is safe, of course, but also supports their learning, development, and growth. That's why we've maintained professional development funding and wage top-ups that are among the most generous in the country for our early childhood educators. This helps keep qualified and professional educators in the system to care for our youngest citizens. We'll take our commitment to quality even further with this investment, with $5 million additional dollars to improve quality programming and professional development. So much great work has been done over the past years into the FLIGHT curriculum, an evidence-based early learning framework developed right here in Alberta, but right now it's only available at a select few childcare centres. We will put it online and make it free of charge for all 2,900 plus licensed childcare centres across the province. This is a significant expansion that will allow children and families across the province to access quality childcare and early learning opportunities should their centres choose to offer that program. We'll have more to announce on these initiatives in the coming months because the work does not stop here. We'll continue speaking with parents and childcare operators, and that also includes preschools. Unfortunately, preschools have, in the last number of years, been overlooked as part of the spectrum of choice in childcare, despite being a great option for parents who either work part-time or work from home. I've heard these concerns from parents. I've heard it from preschool operators. Preschools do in fact fall under this bilateral agreement, and my ministry will work with them and our childcare working group to see how we can address that. We're also working towards changes to childcare legislation. Grand Prairie MLA Tracy Allard just wrapped up consultations to hear from providers, educators, and parents across the province. This is the first time they've been widely consulted in more than a decade. We asked them how we can improve the overall quality and safety of childcare, but also how we can reduce unnecessary red tape within the system. The Child Care Licensing Regulation is set to expire in January, and neither the Licensing Act or the regulations have been reviewed since 2008. These key pieces of legislation are the rules that govern childcare in Alberta. So later this year, we will update and modernize them based on the feedback we've heard to reflect today's workforce demands and expectations around safety and quality. We will ensure safety, enshrine quality, and make the system easier to navigate. This means educators can focus more of their time supporting children and families and less time jumping through hoops and filling out paperwork. I want to close by saying that our government believes childcare is not a one-size-fits-all solution for Alberta parents. In fact, only 30% of Alberta families with children access licensed childcare. What works for some parents simply does not work for others, and that's okay. My priority as Minister of Children's Services is to ensure a full range of childcare options to make available for Alberta parents. That means trusting parents to decide how to care for their children as they get back to work and contribute to our economic recovery, and trusting childcare educators and entrepreneurs to meet the needs of their families by not limiting their creativity or telling them how to operate. I want to again thank Minister Hussen for respecting this vision and working with us to invest in Alberta's children and our recovery. Thank you very much, and now I believe we're both happy to take questions.
Thank you, Minister Schulz, and again, Minister Hussen. We'll now open the phone lines for questions. Operator, please put through the first caller.
Our first question comes from Janet French of BBC. Your line is open.
Morning. Thanks for taking my question. I believe this is for Minister Schulz. So I just added up the numbers roughly of the programs you mentioned, and that adds up to $45 million, but this is a bilateral agreement. So what is the province's contribution to this? Also, if the $45 million is just for 1 year, I mean, some of these things refer to subsidies or programs that would continue beyond 2021. So what's the long-term financing plan for sustaining these initiatives into the future?
That's a great question. Thank you, Janet, for joining us. I think I'll start, and then Minister Hussen may want to comment on the length of the term of the agreement. So we here in Alberta invest $400 million each year into childcare. Much of that goes to support wage top-ups. Again, a huge piece of quality is making sure that we have a highly educated workforce and that we're able to retain those educators to continue to care for Alberta children. Other pieces of that are, in fact, the subsidy that we provide for low to middle income families. And so with this agreement, this bilateral agreement is really meant to go one step further and really support the work that the province is already doing in many of these areas. And so we did at first discuss a longer term. I do believe the federal government, the first bilateral agreement was for 3 years. The goal was to enter into another long-term plan, but obviously with the current situation and COVID and the situation we're finding ourselves in, we went with a one-year bilateral agreement, and I really do want to thank Minister Hussen for really allowing provinces to be flexible and build on the great things that they're already doing within each of the areas of quality, accessibility, and affordability.
Thank you, Minister Schulz. To build on what you've said, yes, we're talking about a one-year agreement now, but we are always here for the long term. The federal government has made a commitment to invest in the creation of an additional 250,000 before and after school spaces. We will have this 1 year agreement, and an investment will also give us the room to sit down and continue to work together. As you said, the work continues to build on a longer term agreement that incorporates a lot of Alberta's priorities but also the federal pan-Canadian childcare framework. So we will continue to work together, and make no mistake, we will be there for this sector throughout the country, including in Alberta, and the federal government will continue to do that. And proof of that is not only are we transferring $400 million to the provinces and territories this fiscal year for early learning and childcare, which we had already made flexible to deal with the challenges presented by COVID-19 pandemic to the sector. We're also, in addition to that, investing and making available an additional $625 million to the sector to deal with the issue of the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, to ensure that the sector remains resilient and bounces back stronger and is there for families as they go back to work, parents, especially women. And so we will be there for the long term. So just this fiscal year, over $1 billion for early learning and childcare is the most that the federal government has ever spent and transferred to provinces and territories specifically for early learning and childcare. But make no mistake, beyond that, we will be there, and we will have the backs of Alberta families, and we will work with the government of Alberta to do that.
Thank you, Janet, for that question. Operator, please put through the next caller.
Our next question comes from Glenn McGregor of CTV. Your line is open.
Thank you. The question for Minister Hussen. Minister, based on the testimony we heard yesterday at the Finance Committee from the Finance Minister, who had previously been found to have breached conflict of interest rules, and yesterday admitted that he had taken approximately $40,000 worth of free trips from the WE organization. Do you still have confidence in your cabinet colleague?
Absolutely. I have full confidence in Minister Morneau, and I look forward to continuing to work with him. Look, this is, him as well as the Prime Minister have made it very clear that this is the way things unfolded was not what they would have preferred. But the focus has always been on young people and allowing them and giving them an opportunity to serve the community, to give back, and to also improve their skills and build on their journey to into the labor market and to build careers. So we're still focused on that, and we will find other avenues to enable them to do so.
Thank you, Glenn. Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Lisa Johnson of Post Media. Your line is open.
Hi, good morning. I have a question for Minister Schulz just about the $29 million number that she mentioned. Is that new funding, or what budget line is she referring to? And for Minister Hussen, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about the differences between Alberta and other provinces' childcare funding structures, and how were they taken into account in this agreement?
So I can answer that first question. The $29 million for affordability and for low and middle income families and childcare subsidies so that they can access childcare is in addition. That's based of the federal dollars, but it's in addition to $20 million additional dollars that we redirected in the last two budgets to also support childcare subsidies. It's truly something that we feel is very important, that no matter whether a parent is choosing a licensed center or a licensed day home, that they have access to subsidy and choice in the type of childcare that they seek for their kids. And so that just in the last year and a half, with this investment added to the investments made through this bilateral agreement, we've increased nearly $50 million in childcare subsidy.
And to add to Minister Schulz's point, we fund early learning and childcare to support provincial efforts to create more affordable, accessible, and quality and safe childcare spaces. And we've always done that, and we will continue to do that. Our $45 million investment as part of this agreement with Alberta will ensure that Alberta is able to offer more spaces for families in need. And we have a pan-Canadian framework for early learning and childcare that emphasizes affordability, accessibility, quality, and safety. But provinces do have the flexibility to focus on local priorities and circumstances. And this particular year, there's the added challenge of COVID-19 pandemic and what it has done to the sector, and the particular challenges that it has presented to the early learning and childcare sector. So that the money that we're transferring to Alberta as part of this agreement can, and I'm expecting will be used also for dealing with COVID-19 pandemic insofar as it has negatively impacted the sector, in addition to the creation of more spaces, more childcare spaces for families in need.
Well, and I think to add on that, one of the pieces was, as you would have seen in the news release, part of this announcement was negotiating the ability to carry over $10 million in funds that were unused from last year, which would typically then be returned to the federal government. Minister Hussen and I were able to negotiate keeping that here in Alberta to help with our COVID-related response, and that will be added to the $18 million in redirected funds that we've already committed to. We are currently working with childcare operators, out-of-school operators, and preschools to determine how best to roll out that last phase of funding, recognizing that many of them have taken advantage of generous federal support programs through COVID, provincial support programs, most recently the Small Medium-Sized Business Program, $200 million that childcare centres, day homes, and preschools do qualify for.
Thank you very much, ministers. I believe that's all the questions we have. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Minister Schulz.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.